Hi, our channel is about documenting things that are not in the manual or not obvious or things I learned along the way I wish I had known beforehand. So today we're looking at a TR6 oil pump and we're going to evaluate it for wear. And I found some things about that that were not in the manual, some things that were wrong in the manual. And I'm also, this is an evaluating parts for wear kind of series on the TR6 engine, but I'm going to also talk about maybe how to recondition or quote unquote rebuild this while I'm at it. I'm going to cover the oil pump, the internals of the oil pump, options for replacing it, how to measure it in here, some measurements that are wrong in the manual in here. Also going to talk about this bush. You don't have to pull this out. I pulled it out because I wanted to, and we're going to talk about, there's nothing in the manual talking about the wear on this bush. We're going to talk about that and what it should be, and you might recognize, I just have the drive dog here so you'll understand how it goes. Roger Williams' book does point out something interesting on the oil pump. He points out that in this section on the oil pump that the older ones prior to, 1971, something like that, had a cast iron oil pump, and then the later ones were an alloy in a higher capacity. So put a magnet on it and see which one you have, and he recommends that you always fit the higher capacity alloy one if you find you have a cast iron one. So let's dig into this oil pump. Well, we're evaluating our oil pump for wear. You might recognize it better like this. I have it all taken apart and cleaned up. So the obvious part of wear on an oil pump is obviously the bottom part here, and you can see that there are some ridges there. I can just barely catch my fingernail on those, and you can lap that flat, and we'll talk about that later. So there is a little bit of wear here, but the question is the wear on this thing so bad that I have to buy a new one? And I've heard stories that the new ones, the tolerances on the new ones aren't even as good as the old ones that are worn. So let's take a look at how to measure the tolerances. Now, if you have done this before, you know there's a couple of different places that they tell you to measure. One is between the outer rotor and the pump body, and that should be 10 thousandths. Between the inner rotor and the outer rotor, and that should be 4 thousandths. So the next thing we can measure is how worn the top of this all is. And you do that by getting a good high quality straight edge like this and pass the feeler gauge under to see what we've got. Let's see, here's 4 thousandths. 4 thousandths is kind of tight, and 5 thousandths doesn't go. So we check it from a couple different directions in a couple different places. There's 4 thousandths, 5 thousandths, 4 thousandths goes, 5 doesn't, and so on. So my clearance here is 4 thousandths, and that's what the specification was, 4 thousandths. So I'm good there. Now you'll notice that I have a bunch of different, let me move you over here a little bit. I have a bunch of different marks on here. Why is that? Well, the assumption is that that you can come in and you can just come in with a 4 thousandth feeler gauge, and you can pop it in there, and you can say, oh, hey, that's nice and tight. Now I'm wiggling it to get to check it and back and forth. That's nice and tight, so let's go with a 3 thousandth. You know, yeah, 3 thousandth, that's right. So it's 3 thousandth, yay, it's all in spec, right? Well, that's not true, because each one of these is worn to a different amount, and each one of these is worn to a different amount. And you'll see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 here. If you remember your high school or college math, you'll know that with 5 choices here and 4 choices here, 5 times 4 is 20. You have 20 different combinations of these that, and so what I did was I measured each one. I said, okay, one to one, and I measured that, and I found that was 3/1000. And then I measured 1 to 2. I spun it around like that, and now I'm 1 to 2, and I find, okay, I'm just going to assume that's 3/1000, right? Oh, that's really loose. Let's try something else. Oh, that's 4/1000. Let's see if 5/1000 will go. It's a little tight at 5. So that's a 4/1000. That's 4/1000. So then so after you do 1 to, so I wrote down 1 to 2 is 4/1000, and so then we spin it again, and we do 1 to 3 and measure that one, and that was 3/1000. So and so on. So I did all 20 combinations to find out what my real clearances were, what my average clearances were overall. And if you'll notice, I've got a chart here that I've got 2/1000s here up to 4/1000s, and it seems like so the first number is the inner rotor, the first number is the inner rotor, the second number is the outer rotor. So it seems like on the outer rotor, number 2, we got 4/1000s, 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 4/1000s. I think my number 2 outer rotor is a little bit worn compared to the rest. But if I had only measured that one, I would have thought all of them are right at the edge of spec, right at 4/1000s. But my measurement shows they go anywhere from 2 to 4, and most of them are 3/1000s. So I'm going to say that part of the wear is actually doing pretty well. It averages somewhere around 3/1000s, which is well within our spec. So the other specification that we can look at is the measurement of the space between the outer rotor and the pump body, and the specification is 10/1000s. My actual doing a go and then a no go, too thick is that's too thick is no go. My actual on that one was 4/1000, so I'm in good shape there. Having a clearance 6,000 out of spec didn't pass the sniff test. That didn't seem right. And I ran across this article on classicmotorsports.com about 6 appeal. It's talking about Group 44. If you haven't heard of Group 44, a famous Triumph racing team, the GT6 they made, and the and they talk about all the things that they did with that GT6 to make more power for racing as they restored one of the cars. And they have a section here on the oil pump. And it's interesting. It talks about what the best clearance is between the body and the outer rotor. They said they blueprinted the oil pump to improve pressure, and they found that a 0.004-inch clearance will yield the highest oil pressure, especially when combined with cam bearings. We should see a 30 to 40% more pressure, even when the oil is hot. And they talk about swapping. If you buy aftermarket repair kits to swap them in and out, consider 6,000 to be your maximum. Remember, mine is at 4,000. So that 10,000, I think that's wrong. Scratch that out of your manual. Let's put 4,000 in there instead. Okay, now let's talk about one more aspect of wear on the pump, and that is, this is the, and I'll show you the video of me taking it out. This is the bush that came out. You might recognize this stripe here is sitting down in the distributor like that, and then the distributor drive dog pops, fits in there. See the bushing down in there. It goes around like this and fills up most of that hole. What I have here is I have a brass punch, and whenever you're hitting on something like that, it's a good idea to use brass. Now you could use a long piece of running thread and pull it out, but I'm going to replace that bushing, so I'm not quite as worried about taking it out as I am putting it back in. Rimmer Brothers carries them, or you can have them made. So let's go ahead and just knock. Now I like using a big hammer because it just, you can gentle taps. I also have a large piece of brass rod that I use sometimes for this same kind of thing. You can I don't want to hit any further than that. This one's just a tiny bit longer. There it goes. And there is our bushing, and there's no actual damage. Anyway, this shaft goes into the bush like this, and it only goes in a very short way. You can actually see on this shaft the wear section there. It only goes in a very short way, and there's a clearance then between the shaft and this bushing, and there's no spec in the manual. So what I had to do is I had to go to an engineering site to find what is the spec for a 1/2-inch hole. So I found a site called the engineersedge.com, and I found for a class 2 free fit for a run, or free running fit, that for a 1/2-inch shaft, the clearance should be somewhere between 7 10,000ths and 28 thousandths of an inch. So I got my TR3 manual out and took a look at the oil pump specs in the TR3 manual, and I did find the bush in the cylinder block. It's the same size, 0.500. It was right in between there. 0.5008 was mine, and it shows a clearance that the clearance should be 0.0015 to 0.0030. So I'll update my diagram. You should check your bushing to see if it's a steel bushing or if it's a bronze replacement bushing. Apparently the bronze bushing has a different clearance according to this thread on the Triumph Experience forum. It says 15 thou to 25 thou. He says the original clearance was 1 to 2 thou for the original steel bushing. So I've got numbers all over the place here. In any case, I'm so far out of tolerance that it doesn't matter. But so I took a micrometer and I took measurements on both axes here, and I found that actually this is worn into an oval, and I had for the shaft I had 0.4959 on one axis and 0.4965 on another. So 0.4959 this way and the other dimension going this way. Then I took a telescoping gauge and put it in the hole. And you need to be careful. Only take it in that first 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch or so, because that's the part in the place where this only in as deep is that much as far as the bearing rights to get the accurate measurement. So you take this, you loosen this, you get it right, and then you tighten this, and then you check and you feel it kind of like a feeler gauge. Do you have it right? And then you tip it out, and then you take a micrometer and you measure, and you very carefully get the measurement from here, again like a feeler gauge kind of feel. And what I found there was that hole right there in that first part was 0.5008. So if you take the hole and you subtract the minimum shaft diameter and the maximum shaft diameter, we get a clearance of 0.0049 to 0.0043, Well, that's significantly outside of our spec of 0.007 to 0.0028. So I'm wondering if it really, is that really the kind of specification that they were looking for? Well, something that I did was I took the drive dog for the distributor and I did the same thing. I measured this shaft and I got a very consistent. I measured it here and I measured it here where it rides in the bushing, and again it rides in this side of the bushing. So I rechecked the hole on this side to see in all dimensions to see what the hole was. The hole was the same size, 0.5008. But the distributor drive was larger significantly by 15 or more 10 thousandths. It was 0.4980. When you subtract that out, you get 0.0028. Well, that's right at the top end of the specification for that size hole, 0.0007 to 0.0028. So that tells me that if the spec for this shaft is the same as the spec for this shaft, then that one's worn way out of tolerance for at least what this engineering site tells me. So this is okay. Likely this bushing is okay. This shaft, not. Oh, hey, surprise. You can buy the parts. Here's an alloy, a pump kit for the TR6, and it's a pretty good price from British Parts Northwest. I did look and see if I could buy just the shaft, because if you look at the metal on those parts, it's not bright and shiny as the ones that we have. So who knows if it's as good. I've heard also, like we saw in that other article, that the replacement parts aren't always in spec or aren't always as good as the ones you have. So your mileage may vary. Why do I even care if that bushing is worn or if this end of the shaft is worn? Well, I think I figured it out. Remember, I've already lapped this surface. We'll talk about that later, but remember all my wear marks in here? I think the reason those get in there is because if this is allowed to rock back and forth, it changes. You can see it change the alignment here, right? Well, if I pull this over to one side like this, I can catch my nail on that. You can hear that? My nail catches. I think this shaft being allowed to rock back and forth, allows this to dig into this. And you can see I lapped it. I pushed it over to the side and turned it a little bit, and you can see I scratched it a little bit here. I think that's why this bushing is important. So this is a good, if you care about this, or if you want to avoid wearing this surface, maybe we ought to look at this shaft and look at that bushing. Another thing is, why would this push to one side or the other? Well, I was talking to, is it Leighton or Layford? I can never remember, over at British Parts Northwest about this, and talking to him about his pump rebuild kits, which include this part and this part, asking the quality on it. And I was saying, hey, I noticed this shaft is worn here. What causes that? And he talked about how the cam gear fits on here, and as the cam engages it and pushes this to one side as the cam engages. So there's forever a lateral force on this shaft. So anyway, that's how I evaluated wear on an oil pump. I found that everything was pretty much okay except for this part of the shaft. So anyway, so technically this oil pump is rejected. There's one more there's one more website you ought to be aware of. This is the tr6.danielsonfamily.org website. It has a blueprinting the oil pump article, which goes over a lot of the same kinds of things that I did. But what is very helpful here is he goes over how to lap that cover using sandpaper. He uses a lighter oil and ending up with a cover that looks like this. This is exactly what I'm going to do with mine if I don't replace it. He shows his before and after. To get rid of the wear here, we lapped it, and I used a mirror because a piece of glass is very flat, and I didn't have a piece of glass. All I had was that old project mirror from an abandoned project. And a piece of 220 wet and dry sandpaper. I stopped at 220. You can keep on going if you like. I lapped this side until all the wear was out. You don't have to worry about how much you take off of this one. Where you do have to worry if you lap this side, which I lapped a little bit, you do have to worry about the clearance. Remember, we have a clearance between here and here. And so I took off 1,000. So I took my clearance from 4,000ths down to 3,000ths. So you need to be careful of that. I remember finding somewhere where somebody took it down to 1,000th and called it a higher, a higher performance pump. I don't know if that's true or not. I wouldn't take any more than that off of this. So we're going to lap. Again, glass is very flat. It makes a good lapping surface. Sometimes I use the surface of my cast iron table saw, but I wanted this very flat. The overall lapping to get this to this stage using 220, it took me about 35 minutes, 40 minutes, but that motion works just right from a physical therapy exercise I have to do, so I chose to just stay with the 220. If you do this, you want to go rougher than 220 and then keep moving up in grade to get it down to this, that would be good. I have tried in the past using a belt sander, those kinds of things, and I have found it to be disastrous. I stick with the glass. Let's get a real good close view. I've already done some of the work on it. Again, I'm not pushing down really hard. So a half hour later, it's in good shape. This is a casting defect, I think, and I'm just going to not worry about that. I'm going to do the same and just touch up touch that face up too. So just for fun, I took some 800 grit crocus cloth and did it the last little bit, and let's see if we can get it to leak. I think it's going to leak by that casting defect there regardless. So here we go. Let's pour some water in there. And let's take a look. There's a little leak right there. And there's another one. Oh, just tiny leaks. Right there. It looks like we got the one with the casting defect. Looks up. There it goes. I tilt it. But anyway, I think you get the idea. I'm not going to fool with that anymore. So let's summarize what we did here. We blueprinted essentially our oil pump, and we first checked the outer to inner clearance, and that specification for the outer to inner was 10,000ths in the manual. We scratched it out, put it 4 to 6. That's wrong in the manual. The inside was 4,000ths, and we did all the permutations here on ours and found that ours was 2 to 4,000ths. I think it was a little bit over one place. Anyways, it was a little 2 to 4 thousandths on average. So we blueprinted this. The next thing that we did was we evaluated the bushing to see how much rock this would have, because it creates the it creates the wear on here. So we evaluated the shaft and the bushing clearance here, and we determined the specifications don't exist anywhere. So, but we did determine that the pump, the bushing is probably supposed to be about 0.5008, and then our shaft is probably supposed to be the same size as the distributor shaft, which is 0.4980. Our clearances, which we didn't have, again, don't have, we found a couple of different numbers. We found 0.0007 to 0.0028 from that engineering website. The TR3 was 15 thou to 30 thou. So there we go. Tools that we used a micrometer to measure this. We used a telescoping gauge that goes up to a 1/2 inch to measure this. To get this out, we used some brass punches. To lap this, I used some 220 wet and dry, brand new, clean, on a clean 1/4 inch thick mirror. I also used some 800 grit crocus cloth to finish it up. So I hope that, and what did we find? We found this was fine. It was in tolerance. We found this was fine. It was into all of this. This was in fine. It was in tolerance. The only thing that was bad was this. So to rebuild, to refresh, to make this pump as good as one of the 150-pound restoration pumps that you can buy, we lapped the end, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to buy the rebuild kit to get this shaft fixed. And then everything here should be in tolerance. Well, I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope you learned something. I sure did as I thought through this and trying to figure it out. I try to document on this channel things that are not in the manual. There's a lot that was not in the manual or that was wrong in the manual here. So if this was helpful to you, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, put a comment in if you know something. I really enjoy hearing from you. So thanks again for watching.